Welcome to Front-End Web Development subject. In this video, we will learn about how do you create a React app and what's a project directory? How do you create components using JSX? What are the types of components in React? To start with, let's head back to our command prompt where we are going to type npx create React app. Create React app is an utility provided by React, which takes followed by project name or app name. Hit enter. This would take little time to create our project. Mine is already ready now. cd my app. Let's open this in Visual Studio Code. If you look at this, it comes up with this project structure where the first folder, node modules. If you open this, it has all the dependencies installed by our npm. If you are installing through an, all the dependencies will fall into node modules folder. Then public, where if you expand this, you'll be seeing a couple of files in it. Public, where you'll be storing all the assets related to your project, like HTML files, any images, all of them will fall into this folder. Here, another important folder where most of the times developer will be working is src folder. We call that as source code, where these are the few React components which are extended within .js. The entry point for any React application would be index.js. If you click on that, you may be seeing this coding part here, where it is trying to pick up app, which is a component over here, which is, you can see here, app.js. Click on that. This is what the serving page would be. To look at it, how does this looks? Go back to your terminal, type npm start. This is what our main component is rendering. Going back, this is what it is trying to render there. So index.js is an entry point for our project, and in turn index.js is calling a component called app, is an main component which is trying to render something onto our page. In addition to that, you may be seeing app.css, which is exclusive CSS for our app.js. Similarly, app.test.js, which is an testing file before you would like to render it, what it has to render, what it has to be checked is written under this. Throughout our subject, we are not worried about our testing files. Similarly, index.js has its own set of index.css. There are some other setups over here. Logo.svg, this is what it is trying to pick up as an SVG file. Report web vitals and setup.tests, we are not worried as of moment. Everybody, in index.js, you'd be seeing app is trying to render it out onto the document called, onto the division called root. This root is been given in the public folder in index.html. there. I hope this is clear now. In addition to this, git ignore, where if you would like to associate our project to the git, then what are the files to be ignored and what else it has to be picked up can be given in this git ignore. Similarly, package.json is a very important file which we cannot miss, where you'll be seeing all the dependencies of our project. As of now, my project is dependent on React 18th version, React DOM, React scripts, and Web Vitals. In future, if your project is growing up, you might have to install multiple dependencies, where this comes and sits into your dependencies here. With this knowledge, let's try to update our React app with JSX. Let me remove the default one which is coming over here. Let me write h1 tag. Welcome to app component using JSX. Like this is something like HTML element where I'm trying to put under a function which is an JavaScript function. Like our app.js is an extension of an JavaScript file. Babel comes in built with our node modules and converts this JSX into JavaScript code. Let's look at our output. There you go. Heading back, let's create a folder called components under SRC, where I'll be creating the components. You know, in React, there are two types of components. They are functional components and class components. Let's create our own components now. Under the components, let me create a file called functional component or component, where fun stands for functional here, .js. Start writing in functional component here. Functional component starts with a function, takes a functional component name. Most of the times, the file name would be our component name. This is how it helps us in SEO. Then write return. Every function should return something. Let me try to return. We are one element. We are in functional component. Save this. In addition to this is a separate file and app.js is a separate file where this is a main component which would render something onto the web page. So I have to use this component in an app.js so that would render. So to do that, let's export this component first. Export default fun component. Forgot to keep parenthesis over here. Yes. Let's try to import in app.js, or directly you can call upon fun component. Let's save the file. Do not forget to import the fun component here. Heading back here, there we are in functional component. Basically, functional component is something which are stateless, which does not come with an default state within it. Functional component is does not maintain or manage a state internally. Whenever you needed simpler and easier to read components, then go with an functional components. Whenever you would like to pass some data to that, you can pass using props. We will be seeing props in coming session. Let's create another component called class component. Within the components, here, class component. It's a convention to follow all the components with an uppercases. Starts with an uppercases. Let us create class called class component, name of file, and what you're trying to create in class name here. Try to match it, please. So it is not mandatory. It's always suggestible to write that place. React dot component, which renders something. Render is a function coming with it. Let's try to return h1. We are in class component. Let's try to export this class component so that I can import it anywhere. In this case, it is app.js. Wherever it is required, we can import it if you export that. Let's try to export. Export default class component. Let's save this file. Come back to app.js. Let's use the class component and try to see what it is trying to render. You do not have React is not defined in class component. This is a common mistake where the beginners would do. Heading back to class component, since you are using React.component here, it's important and mandatory to import React. Import React from React. Save your file, heading back, there you go. These are very basic example for functional component and class component. I insist you to practice the basic level first. In coming classes, you'll be seeing more about on functional components and class components. I insist you to practice the basic level first. In coming classes, you'll be seeing more about on functional components and class components. Why do we call functional component as in stateless component, and why do you call class component as in stateful component? See you in the next video.